Alright you guys, so welcome back to my channel. We are just going to jump into episode 5 part 2. Now, when we left off, we were speaking on Carlita's involvement in the case and also her involvement in the acts that put her ex-husband away. So, Carlita had been introduced to the case after the infamous rumored mansion party in 2002. So, if you guys remember from part 1, and if you have not seen part 1, I will link it down in the description box below. But if you guys remember in part 1, I stated that Tamara had actually allegedly been assaulted by the former mayor's ex-wife Carlita. At this party, Tamara had allegedly been giving the former mayor a lap dance, and at that same moment, his ex-wife Carlita had walked in. She apparently had saw everything and got mad about the situation and assaulted Tamara. It had been said that she had actually punched Tamara, and I will be saying allegedly because this is all alleged, but after she had punched Tamara, that caused Tamara to fall onto a coffee table that had been nearby. This had actually caused it to break, and once she had saw that it was broken, she had actually grabbed the leg from the coffee table and struck Tamara once in the head with it. Carlita obviously avoided charges for this. Now, ABC News had actually reported on her first ever deposition, and this had actually happened in Fort Worth, Texas. Now, this ABC 7 news report video had been dated back to 13 years ago. Before I get into this video, I really do want to express that this video is very much still about, and this video's purpose is very much still to get as much awareness, as much eyes on this case, to refresh anyone's memory that, you know, may have any information from around that time that can help with her case, and just reach out to anyone who will speak up about her case. But I also do want to shed light on the corruption surrounding the individuals that was involved in her case and how they used their power against people. Now, as I stated before, Carlita had been involved in the corruption case also, allegedly. ABC News had reported on this, where she had hopped out of her SUV and walked surrounded by a bunch of security guards to her attorney's office, and she had reportedly been in the office for over hours. And there had been talks that she was questioned about the mysteries surrounding Tamara's murder. Tamara's family attorney, Yatooma, was excited to finally get answers from Carlita.
Detroit going in for hours of grilling in her first ever deposition surrounding the mystery of slain exotic dancer Tamara Greene.
Carlita's going to answer my questions. Finally, after 8 short years, we're finally going to get an answer.
Attorney Yatooma felt as if the mayor obstructed the investigation into Tamara's murder, and at this point, Yatooma, along with Tamara's family, had been fighting for justice for a while now. The same day that Carlita had been deposed, her father-in-law had also been deposed, but he did not show up. And although her husband had been going through all the fraud allegations and was heavily involved in a corruption case, she still had her luxury cars, and Carlita still resided in her mansion. Her car had actually been registered to a trust that had been under her ex-husband's name. And again, I will be saying allegedly. And she had been renting her luxury home for over $2,000 a month. That is a lot of money. I could not find much on her, anything at all, as a matter of fact, on her transcript of the deposition, sadly. But in 2008, Carlita did speak out about her husband's tearful apology that he had on television at the beginning of his scandal. This interview had been posted on blackamericaweb.com, and in this interview, she stated that she did not really know why she did not leave her husband back when the allegations had first surfaced, mainly the cheating allegations between her husband and his coworker. The former mayor in that same interview stated that any talks about divorce was always shut down by their 2 twin eldest sons. She did state that she did feel betrayed about it, but in the same instant, she felt that they were made for each other. So if you are interested in watching more of that interview, will be linked down in the the description box below, excuse me. Now, allegedly, Carlita had a program in Detroit that had been focused on teaching kids at the Sherrod Elementary School about nonviolent conflict resolution. But a witness in the corruption case had testified that didn't happen at all. Carlita did not do anything of what she was supposed to do and what she was paid to do. Carlita had actually been paid more than $37,000 in state grant funds.
It was a program that was supposed to teach students at Sherrard Elementary School in Detroit about nonviolent conflict resolution. But a witness in the Kilpatrick corruption trial testified today that Carlita Kilpatrick never actually trained any of the children she was supposed to, even though she was paid more than $37,000 in state grant funds. Donna Williams used to be the executive director of the Vanguard Community Development Corporation, the nonprofit arm of Bishop Edgar Van's Second Ebenezer Church.
Certainly, I enjoyed knowing Carlita, working with Carlita. She did some good things, and there's some things that remained undone at the end of the contract, and I'm sorry about that as well.
So when the Kilpatrick's attorney spoke out, which was Bobby Admin, she stated that she had no comment on the situation that occurred between the former First Lady and Tamara, continuing to say that she will respond to it accordingly. The attorney also expressed that there had been some accounts that she heard that the party had never even happened. And as I stated previously, I could not find any transcript on the deposition, and that is because it had been completely sealed. Now, this questioning had been the first time anyone had ever spoke to the First Lady about Tamara's situation. This to me seemed a little bit neglectful. Yatooma had to be the first person to interview her about the situation. And ABC News 7 had been reporting about this the entire time. Yatooma stated that it had been a shame that no one questioned the First Lady. As I stated in part 1, 2 officers had actually been fired for investigating the rumored mansion party. Now, the former Lieutenant Alvin Bowen, he had actually been rewarded $200,000 after winning his lawsuit because the jury felt as if his resignation had actually been based off of his investigation and indulgence into the murder of Tamara and also the infamous alleged mansion party. Now, this all occurred in the year of 2005. In August of 2007, Beatty testified that she and Kilpatrick did not have any intimate relationship, nor did they have a romantic relationship between the years of 2002 and 2003. A month later, as I stated prior, 2 former officers had actually been awarded $6.5 million. And because of this, Kilpatrick vowed to actually appeal for that. And later on he did, which he was denied for. And there is tons and tons of information on Kilpatrick's frauds, his other affairs. It had been a huge thing back then. But I actually do want to move on to the theories surrounding Tamara's murder. 20 years later, Tamara sees Greene's murder has yet to be solved. One theory had been that Tamara had been at the wrong place at the wrong time. Tamara, according to everyone around her, had a specific type, and people felt as if she had been hanging around the wrong crowd, which resulted in her demise. Around that time, her former boyfriend, Eric Mitchell, had allegedly been involved in some drug dealing beef, and they felt the drive-by shooting had actually been intended for Mitchell. There have been a few people that had issues with that theory though. They felt that theory could be easily debunked because there had been 2 former officers that was fired because of that. So why would they be fired for looking into her murder? What was the reason for that? Another theory stated that Tamara had actually been shot allegedly because of her involvement with Kwame Kilpatrick. And this one is widely believed amongst a lot of people, including Tamara's daughter. As stated before, Tamara had allegedly been shot with a weapon used commonly known by police officers. They felt as if someone did not want the events of that night at the party or the involvement between Kwame and Tamara to be out, allegedly. Now, a reporter that spoke from a podcast called Where Cold Cases Go to Die, his name was George Hunter. He states that He had been all over this case from the very beginning. He stated that the mansion party had actually been one of those rumors that was well known amongst most of the reporters. He states that they looked up reports about the rumored party more times than they can count. It had actually become second nature to them. Now, around this time, George Hunter was known to be one of the best reporters in Detroit on Detroit News. He spent a lot of time around officers. He stated that he did not know if the mansion party had been real or if it was just a rumor, but he did hear some talk about it from his sister. Hunter stated that a lot of people had been chasing this story, including himself. He tried his best to prove that a party even happened that night. He had heard rumors from his sister, as I stated before, who had been a Detroit cop, and he actually had 3 siblings that was a part of the police force. So he basically had the inside scoop of what had been going on. As a reporter, that is very huge because he would always be getting the inside scoops, especially on specific cases, because police would heavily be involved. One of the Hunter siblings had actually shared the information with him that came from one of his colleagues from the police academy. And around the department, they had just basically been laughing at the situation that happened between Tamara, allegedly, and the mayor's former wife. At the time, it had been going around the department. It got back to the sister, which in return got back to Hunter. After that, he began to investigate. Hunter said that that was not the first time he heard it, though, and he was not the first to put it out. And he also stated that allegedly there had been a lawsuit about it in the beginning of the case. Now, I'm not sure if the lawsuit came from Tamara's side or if the lawsuit came from the mayor's side. It does not go into depth about that. But allegedly, so many allegations from police officers and so many lawsuits had been coming out around that time, and just of officials trying to cover up the events of that night. George states that Tamara's case was a rabbit hole that was just crazy to go down. He said no one had been able to figure it out, and to be honest, he don't think no one ever will. He says that it has been an icky case, and he has been trying to chase this case for half of his 27 years in the department.
I don't know if I've ever worked on a story so hard and come up with nothing.
Now, aside from a lot of theories on Kilpatrick sending out a hit on Tamara, the police had actually had a suspect on who they thought shot her. The police began building a case against a well-known felon that they knew, whose name had been Derek King, also known as Little D. While researching, I found an article called Detroit News, and it had actually been posted from August 1st, 2008, you guys. And it is a long article, so I am going to go ahead and summarize it for you all. Now, the officers had reason and possible evidence, allegedly, that King had been the one who fired the shots that caused Tamara's demise. At the time, King had been 35 years old. He had actually been supposed to be released September of that year, but instead he had been facing new charges against him for a stick-up during Christmas Eve in 2004. Now, King lawyer states that he knew that those assault charges had just been a reason to just keep him and hold him while they had been investigating more into Tamara's murder. Mike Carlsi, sure enough, narrowed his suspects down to just one person, and he came to this conclusion in just 18 months of his investigation. So his charges had actually been collateral damage and attempted assassination, which had actually been on Eric Mitchell, and he did speak out in an interview stating that he was not guilty of that crime, so stressing that he went ahead and he took a lie detector test, which lie detector test is now does not hold in court. He states that the surviving victim of the shooting even stated that he did not commit the crime. King then goes on to state this.
Are you surprised that they named you publicly, but they haven't come to you with charges?
Yeah, of course. That's crazy. They done tore my life to pieces with that. My family, kids, everything.
He is currently serving 14 to 25 years in prison, and the charges are for attempt murder, and the other ones are actually unrelated to Tamara's case. Now, Carlsval says that the strongest evidence that they have against King had been the white SUV that was driven by the shooter, and this is allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, but the white Lincoln Navigator had actually been in possession of his wife, and the shooter had been left-handed as well as King. So that's
she was missing him a lot, and
some
that's
of the
why
things
she
that
came
made him
back,
come
and
to
I'm
that
sure now she's
conclusion. So when the officers had first arrived on the scene, Mitchell had told them that him and King had been feuding at the moment. Big-time drug kingpin, whose name was Tommy Hodges, he stated that Little D had actually confessed to him that he was behind the whole drive-by shooting. When asked about the girl that had been on the scene and died on the scene, King simply stated to him that she was just in the way.
Everything that Carlita ever did pertaining to me is a dead end, and it's made up everything. If you look at the statements, you look at the evidence, Carlita is just a crooked cop, and hopefully it'll come out in the future.
King had actually felt like Carlsval was lying the entire time and just trying to frame somebody for Greene's murder. In response to that, Carlsval states that his stellar record speaks for itself. The investigator states that Tamara's case is very much still open and is still active, but they will not go into depth about Little D's situation and where they are with him. Now, Kwame Kilpatrick's former bodyguard did come forward, and this had been in a sit-down with ABC 7 News. He states that he had a tell-all book coming out, and this tell-all book would talk about all the things that he went through with Kwame in that situation. It talked about the alleged mention party. His book had been called The Badge of Honor, Blowing the Whistle. Now, Mr. Harris, Walt Harris, which is his name, he states that the way he wrote the book, it was supposed to help the readers to basically draw their own conclusion about the mention party. And as I stated before, he was the first one to file the whistleblowing lawsuit against Kwame. He stated that the reason that he came forward was because he just did not like and respect the fact that Kwame was always around women in bars, and he had always been just traveling with women. He stated that it had been to the point where people was threatening him and even following him on foot. This came shortly after his gun had been taken away and he was demoted to midnight work office. He stressed that at any minute he felt someone can harm him. Now, according to him, he wasn't personally pressed by Kwame, but he does feel like his associates had been sent towards his way. There were people that was approaching him, and there was also a young man that had approached him and threatened him. He ended up leaving in the middle of the night with his family, his 3 children, and his wife, because he strongly believed that if he had stayed, he would have hurt someone or he would have got hurt. At the end of the interview, he states that he was back in Detroit and it felt good for him to be back home without a worry, but he still periodically did look over his shoulder. But we are going to go ahead and speak more about the GoFundMe and the rewards surrounding Tamara's case. An anonymous $100,000 reward was given to Crime Stoppers for Tamara's family in hopes that they will possibly have somebody come forward. Yatooma had actually been asked why now. Yatooma states that he feels enough time has passed for someone to finally feel comfortable to come forward. Because back then, people were afraid. They were disguising their voices when they called with information. And he feels that now Kwame is not in a position of power anymore, so he cannot hurt anybody anymore. He also goes on to state that money talks, so he feels as though this money may help somebody come forward because they may need it or because they just found it in their heart to finally come forward. Tamara's family went on to file a lawsuit in 2005, stating that the city of Detroit did a horrible job during her investigation. They felt that there wasn't really an investigation to begin with, and after years of being in the legal system, that was actually denied, and it had actually been dismissed in 2011. The judge threw it away due to lack of evidence.
It's time enough for Kwame's memory and his threats have surely faded. His reach doesn't extend from a Texas federal prison to Detroit.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure enough to be talking to you about it.
Okay, so January of this year, the 7th to be exact, Ashley, which is Tamara's daughter, she had posted to her TikTok a GoFundMe with a goal of $50,000 to be raised for her mother. She's trying to create a documentary for her mother, which, to be honest, I think will be a very great idea to get her mother's story out there, get more traction, bring more people and more eyes to her mother's story. So I will post a screenshot of her page and also put a link to her page down in the description box below so you guys can go ahead and help her reach her goal or just check out her page. So other than her daughter Ashley, her son did speak out and her mother did speak out as well. So I am going to go ahead and just give you guys a brief rundown on what was said. In an interview with WXYZ TV Detroit News, Brenda Greene, who had been a mother of 3, had high hopes for so long that her daughter's case would finally be brought to justice. Although disappointed, she is still holding out hope. She, of course, just wanted whoever hurt her little girl to just be put away and for her little girl to just get justice. Mrs. Greene also states that she had actually been in the dust about any updates on her daughter's case, which to me is just really ridiculous because as crucial as this case was, as crazy as this case was, to not update her mother, who was worried, out of her mind about the situation, is just so weird to me. She truly just wanted answers. And this interview did come after Brenda had actually been told that her daughter's case would be thrown out. You can just imagine the anger, the hurt she felt. She was confused.
Whoever was responsible for what happened to my daughter would be found guilty, but it didn't happen that way. I'm thinking that this is not fair. It's not fair to Tammy. It's not fair to her children. It's just, I feel like no justice is being served, and that whoever is responsible for this should be held accountable. Everything has been kept away from me, so I'm still in the dark as far as anything goes concerning my daughter and her death.
Tamara's mother and daughter was not the only people that had spoke out on her behalf. Her son had also spoke out in an interview. So her eldest son, Jonathan, did an interview. And this interview was done when he had only been in 9th grade, you guys. So when he was very, very young. That took a lot of courage for him, and I'm sure it was a very, very tough interview to speak about his mother, so early on in the time of her passing. Jonathan's father, whose name was Ernest Flagg, he was also present during the interview, of course, and he actually goes into detail about how afraid Tamara was just months before her passing. He explains that before she had never been so angry with him, but because of what she had been going through, she was just so irate when she was around him and yelling at him. This, of course, caused him to wonder what Tamara had really been going through. The pair dated in their teens, but unfortunately broke up. The pair stayed close due to them having a son. States that Tamara had been terrified and visibly shaken up by the threats. Now, they had scheduled visits for twice out of the week, and also they spoke to each other frequently, but that all seemed to stop once Tamara started to receive the threats. Ernest talks about one visit when Tamara had actually been receiving non-stop phone calls. At first, Tamara was very confused as to who it might be, but then shortly after she replied, "It's them," and I'm guessing she was referring to allegedly Kwame and his crew. He brings up another situation where Tamara had been in the car and she called him in the midst of her driving fast, saying that someone had been following her. She let Mr. Flagg know that she had been nervous at that time. So the car had been chasing her, and from his account, she had actually stopped where the people were, and she had got out of the car, and when she had gotten out of the car, the people that had been following her sped past her. But before they sped past her, they actually gave her her a mean look. Ernest also states that Tamara stayed out for many nights at a time. This had been because she was afraid to sleep at home due to the threats that she had been receiving. Tammy, as her mother referred to her son stated that he missed her a lot, of course, and he also stated that he prayed over her and her case. He also states that he hopes that Kwame is held accountable and that he gets what's coming to him, and he hopes that his mother's killer is found. Both Jonathan and his father is wondering if they even looked into the threats that his mother had been receiving.
I miss her a lot. I pray and ask how she doing.
So Tamara's daughter actually spoke out twice, and as I stated before, she does frequently speak out about her mother on her TikTok. So she spoke out 6 years ago in an interview to WXYZ TV Detroit, and in this interview she had been asked what would she say to the people that hurt her mother, that took her mother away from her. And Ashley, which is Tamara's daughter, she stated that she would tell them that she hates them, rightfully so. She continues to say that she hates that her life had been turned upside down. Ashley feels if Kwame did not do it, then he definitely knows who did. Ashley goes on to state that she feels her mother's case is just being shoved under the rug and she just wants some kind of closure, as does her mother and her son. It changed her a lot, she states. She suffers from a lot of mental damage from it. Just imagine living in the city that your mother was murdered in, and you just always have to hear about the case and, you know, just walk around knowing that you may be amongst the people who hurt your mother, and it's just very, very traumatizing. She feels as though people don't understand how this situation affected her life. Ashley feels, and we all know, that her mother would have done the same for her, and she states that she would do the same for her daughter.
I like the way it is because of something they decided to do.
Who is your mom?
Tamara Greene.
How old were you when you lost your mom?
I was 7.
What would you say to your mother?
I'd just say that I love her and that I miss her.
In the early morning hours.
This case was definitely one of the hardest cases that I had to research and cover. It definitely took me through a lot of emotional hoops, anger, sadness, confusion. And it just goes to show you how people in power would use their status and, you know, just their resources to, you know, allegedly just do the most sick things. And it's very, very important when thinking about this case to never forget Tamara's name. It's very easy to get caught up in the specifics of the case and the rumors surrounding it and the gossip surrounding it and the corruption during the case. It's very easy to get tied into it, and you know, her case and what happened to her kind of gets swept under the rug because of that. Because of the things that Kwame, the person that she was attached to, had been doing. It was very easy for people to just dismiss what was going on and basically just talk. It was a lot. It was really hard for me to get any type of information like solely based off of that without having to include the corruption and just everything else. So I just want for people to also be very respectful in the comments. I know I always say this, and you know, we shouldn't really even have to, but there are people out there that do not know and would not think that their comments are respectful. So if you would not want for someone to say about your family member or about you, just please make sure that your comments are respectful when you do decide to engage in any type of interactions in the comments. I do also want to thank you guys for tuning in again if you are returning, and if you are a new subscriber, I do want to thank you guys for even giving my channel a chance. And all my social media contacts will be down in the description box below if you guys are interested in connecting with me. And not only that, but if you guys have any cases that you would want for me to cover on this channel, I definitely will. I am interested in researching everything, but that was it for this video, you guys. Like I said, please be respectful if we do decide to engage in the comments, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Thank you again and have a great one, and please stay safe, my beautykins.